Good morning! And we've got a different little setup here today. As you can see behind me, that's my wife's desk and her little office here that we have at the house. But she went ahead, since we're both doing the viral thing, her as a principal at an elementary school in Passaic, she set me up a desk. So I got a desk, I got a little setup over here for the computer, and we're both going to be sharing the same office. Not at the same time, though. But at least I have this nice new little setup, so sometimes you'll see me doing the video from here. I want to go back over some of the Chapter 4 lists, and you know, I haven't done this exercise in about a year or so. And one of the things I forgot was, it happens every semester, is how a lot of young people just don't grasp Chapter 1, and there's a particular reason why. I mean, not Chapter 1, but List 1. You know, I'll typically, when we do this exercise, I break you up into groups. So 4 or 5 people together can brain trust and come up with, you know, 6 words or terms. And I'll stop after 25 minutes, go around the room, and if there might be 5 groups, 2 of those 5 groups don't have anything for List 1. And of course, every person in that group is about 18 or 19 years old. And the reason why is that you don't realize that if you go back 8 years in your life, you go back to when you were 10, 9, you know, that kind of thing. You don't realize that there were words that are part of the everyday vernacular. Words that we use on a regular basis, words that are known by people 8 to 80 years old that did not exist before you were 8 years old. You don't realize that. You know, for example, some people can, I mean, I want to pull out somebody in particular of all the, you know, I think I have 118 Com-100 students. The first person who finished this exercise had some of the best answers, and that was Jaquan Pollard. Jaquan, you had some great answers. I mean, some of the things that we're looking for, like selfie, you know, stream or streaming. Okay, Snapchat. I'm not Snapchat because I didn't want any names of stuff. But hashtag. All right, influencer. Okay, these are some of the words that the meanings that we have for these words today didn't exist. I mean, think about it. You go back 10 years ago, and you told somebody who's my age, 54 years old, yeah, I'm going streaming, or I'm going to be streaming. And I think you're going into that little babbly brook, that little water that's flowing through the woods next to our house. Oh, you're going to go in there? That you're streaming? What does that mean? Okay. Now, of course, you have lots of people, 8 to 80 years old, who are cutting the cable cord because of their streaming services, especially Disney+. So there are a lot of new words, especially when it comes to technology. I'll give you a great example. You know, I go back to some of the first times I did this exercise in the mid-90s. And, you know, students didn't realize that, you know, like upload. I mean, what did that mean before 1996, 97? Am I going to load this up onto the upload to the truck? I mean, what does that mean, upload? Okay. You had no idea. Digital pic. Okay. Digital. What does that mean? Digital. Okay. You know, download to my PC. These are words and phrases that had no meaning until about 1996, 1997, and it became part of our everyday common language. There are so many words. Social media, okay? I mean, this did not exist 10, 12 years ago, at least not in the way it does today, where it's so well known among everybody. So, you know, with a lot of you, I gave you some, you know, I was like a little confused at your list one. I know a lot of you got confused. I also think a lot of you really thought a little too much into this. What I should have said to you is that you can't look anything up because your list 2, I mean, some of you had these words in list 2 that you all Googled and something like that. These are words I never heard of. I mean, I was just simply looking for like things like groovy or gnarly or radical, you know, and you guys went into some outstanding, you know, amazing things. But yeah, one of the ones that I always think is interesting is the word gay. Is that the word gay, of course, was always meant happy. And that, of course, is kind of changed right around the Stonewall riots in Greenwich Village, where after a couple of days of police harassment, you know, the gay community in New York City just said, listen, we're not all depressed. We're not all suicidal. We're happy with who we are. because we're gay. You know, we're gay, we're homosexual, we're lesbian, we're gay, we're happy with who we are. And of course, they then adopted the word gay. So it's really not used anymore to mean happy. Although you will hear some older people, you know, my father's older sisters who are in their 80s are still alive, and they'll sometimes use, oh, we went down to Atlantic City and just had a gay time. Okay? And of course, you would first look at her and realize what she's saying, because that's the old meaning of it. So, and of course, your slang terms, it's always interesting for me to read into your terms and the words that you use and the meanings behind them. Because one of the things I always find interesting is that I'll go back 10, 15 years ago, and what those students had for list 5 is what a lot of you have for list 2, you know, as the old and obsolete words. So, all right. So now we move on to that type of communication that no words are necessary, and yet still the message is not only received, but also understood, and that is nonverbal communication. You know, I remember I talked in chapter 1 about, you know, when your dad's standing like this when you come in the doorway, trying to sneak in past your curfew. No words need to be said, okay? But a lot of different things happen with nonverbal communication. For example, if I were to just suddenly, you know, trip and fall, and I start to get up, and you ask me, hey, Eccles, you okay? And I give you one of these. Now, no words need to be said, but I gave you one of these. Well, this is what we call, got my little boards here, an emblem. Okay? Or, for example, sometimes when you say, hey, are you okay? I'm okay. I'm all right. Interesting about this one, though, when you talk about emblems. Sometimes it depends on the culture that you're in. I'll never forget several years ago, we were talking about this, I think it was in the B Wing over at Bergen. And I'm talking about this meaning okay. Okay, yeah, this means okay, which it does. And then a young lady named Consuela from South America, she's in the back of the room, hadn't said a word yet, all semester. She then raises her hand and says, that doesn't mean okay. I'm like, yeah, this means universally, this means okay. She says, no, you do that to my brother, he'll cut you. And I'm like, what is she talking about? And of course, this, or sometimes a variation, maybe turning it this way, in South America, in Asia, and even parts of Eastern Europe, it's got a little different meaning. It's actually more of like a curse word. And it's a very derogatory meaning behind this or this. Or this. And I didn't know that. I just, okay. And then I started to remember a movie that I liked that hasn't, you know, I've seen it multiple times. It was from 1993. It's called Mr. Holland's Opus. Some of you may have seen it before. And in the movie, it's about a guy who at 30 years old, he's a musician, his band breaks up, but he's got a wife who's pregnant, and he's got to find a job. So he becomes a high school music teacher. And he's always trying to temporarily do that while trying to, you know, get back on the road or write music, and he ends up spending 30 years as a high school music teacher. Well, one of the storylines, one of the main storylines in the movie is that he has one child. Now, this is a high school music teacher. Music is everything to him. He has one child, and the child is born deaf. So there's always this conflict because he doesn't know how his world can apply to his son's world. So his son is about 15, 16 years old, and the father comes home, and he's really depressed. And the son says, well, you know, what's the matter? And he says, oh, somebody died today. And the son says, who? And he spells out the name John Lennon. And so he goes, you wouldn't understand. So now he goes in the house, the kid follows behind him and starts signing like crazy. And he's going so fast, the father asked the mother to interpret. And the son is saying, well, what do you think? You think I don't know who John Lennon is? You don't think I don't know how important that is, especially to you? You're my father. I know what's important to you. Why would you assume that I wouldn't know that? And the father's trying to talk him down, and then the son gets angrier, and then finally the son does this, and walks out. So the father just stands there, looks at his wife, he says, what does this mean? And she looks at him and says, asshole! And now I'm thinking, oh my God, that's right. I don't remember that from the movie. How did I not remember that scene? Who knows over the years how many students, I'm like, you know, especially because we have students from all around the world that come to Bergen. It's like, oh yeah, okay, everybody's okay. And I'm wondering how many students are thinking, Eccles just called me an asshole. So you got to be careful with those emblems. But I'll give you something else. You talk about nonverbal communication. There are nonverbal body movements that accompany a verbal message actually help to paint a picture of a verbal message. Now, that's pretty interesting because that's called illustrators. Nonverbal body movements that paint a picture of your verbal. For example, if you happen to be watching any news program this morning, as soon as that weather person comes on, okay, they just don't stand up there and say, so here's the weather, what's going to happen. No, no, no. They have to go ahead and describe it for you. They've got to illustrate it for you. Okay, so we're going to have this cold front come down from Canada. It's going to sweep through the country into our area. It's going to push out that warm weather, and we might see some snowflakes. But then this warm air mass is going to come up from the Gulf of Mexico, push that snow out, and we'll have bright sunshine. And, of course, this is always bright sunshine. Illustrators. Okay. Oh, I'll give you another good example of illustrators as we're now ending the summer. If you know somebody who loves to go fishing, how do they describe a really good fishing trip? Okay? They can't do it without the illustrators. They just can't say to you, oh, let me tell you something. I went fishing yesterday and I caught this big sucker. He was about 85 pounds, a big bluefish off the coast of Sandy Hook. No, no. Let me tell you something. This sucker was like this, 85 pounds. And I mean, I fought this sucker off the coast of Sandy Hook. They must paint a picture of their verbal message. Okay? Now, I don't want to go too long. I don't like to get these videos to go too lengthy because then you start to, because I'm done. But one of my favorite parts of nonverbal communication, because I used to experiment when I was a younger person, and that is the nonverbal way we communicate based on our use of space. And what that's called is proxemics. Okay? It's the nonverbal way we communicate based on our use of space. Now, some of you might be wondering what I'm talking about, okay? And what's interesting to me is many of you, maybe you don't realize it, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. For example, there are some of you, whether when you're coming to Bergen, or if you happen to live like in Hudson County or in Hackensack or someplace, where you take the bus regularly. And let's say when you get on the bus, you don't want nobody sitting next to you. So you go ahead and you sit, you take your bag, boom, you plop it next to you on the other seat. Now, you don't verbally stand up as the bus stops to get other people on and say, listen, nobody sitting next to me, don't even think about it. No, you don't do that. But non-verbally, you are saying that quite loudly by just taking your bag and putting it on the chair next to you. Okay? That's you communicating based on our use of space. Or I'll give you another example. Now, I don't have to do this anymore, but for a long time I did. And that, of course, was use a laundromat. And I love watching people in a laundromat. My God, they are just, you know, they'll take the best basket and they'll put their kid in there, okay? Or they'll take like a folding table because their clothes are now in the dryer, and they'll like set it up and they'll have like their detergent here, their fabric softener here, their bleach here, their cigarette case here, in all four corners of this to make sure that they know, everybody there knows, I've got this folding table. Okay? Now, on one of your pages in proxemics in the chapter, there's something we call that when we go ahead and put the detergent here and the fabric softener here and the bleach here and the cigarette case. Yeah, it's called territoriality. Okay? Now, we see that on a regular basis in our society with dogs. You know, if you have a dog and some dog comes walking past your house, stops to take a pee on your lawn, what does your dog do as soon as your dog gets out there? Boom, goes right to that spot. All right? This is my territory. We do the same thing in laundromats. Okay? Is we go ahead and we make sure this is my space. Remember that, my space? This is my territory. All right? And that's proxemics, the way we non-verbally communicate based on it. We may not say another word to anybody else, but we're making sure they realize that this is my area. All right? So this is all a part of non-verbal communication. All right, here's what you need to do. What is due for Sunday night? Absolutely nothing. Go enjoy your weekend, people. Be checking in for me on Monday morning.